Before we get stuck into the video, let me just mention that it is discount day at the Chessbase online shop. So for the next 24 hours, there's 25% off all products, including my PowerPlay DVD and download series. So if you're interested in something on the opening, the middle game, end games, and lots more besides, then do check it out. I'm really proud of this series. I'll put the link down there. It'll also be in the comments section. So go ahead, fill your boots. You'd be mad to miss out. I'm continuing with Ding Fest, my celebration of the play of Ding Liren, the new World Chess Champion. And I've already looked at a couple of games from the Chinese Championship 2009, which was a breakthrough event for Ding. He was just 16 years old and he won the tournament. Incredible achievement. He was rated way below everyone else. So I'd like to show you another game from that tournament. So Hou Yifan playing white. Of course, she became the highest rated woman in the world. And Ding playing black. In fact, at this time, you can see Yifan's rating was 2590. Ding's was 2458. And Yifan was only 15 years old. Ding, 16 years old. So a battle of the teenagers. What I like about this game is that it once again shows Ding's willingness to sacrifice material. Sometimes he does it for mating attacks, but sometimes just for long-term positional compensation. And that's what we see here. I think this is an aspect of his play which was rather underplayed going into the World Championship match. And, well, we saw that he's prepared to take risks. Ding playing the French defence and the classical variation, which I like very much. So we saw a few days ago a game with bishop g5 and then black takes on e4. But this time Yifan just closes the position. So we have this typical locked French pawn structure. So white pushes on the king side and has some space there. But black counterattacks on the queen side and through the middle. So that d4 square, that's the soft spot in white's position. And that's where a lot of black's play is coming from. So this is one of the starting positions of the classical French. And black can play this in so many different ways. You can take on d4 and bishop c5. You can play a6 and b5 immediately. Or bishop b7 as Ding played, which is one of the modern main lines. Black castles first before committing in the middle or in the centre. And here, big trick here. If white is tempted to castle queenside, that's disastrous. c4 gives black a monstrous attack with b5. But Yifan decides to go kingside instead. And Ding expands on the queen side. And I think this position shows actually very well what I like about black's position. So first of all, there's the nice solid pawn chain. That gives you security in the middle of the board. But I like it that it puts strategic questions to white, which are not obvious what you should play. So should white exchange on c5? Should you allow this pawn to run down the board? How hard do you push on the king side? Do you go for an f5? It's very tricky to know what to do. a3 played by Yifan just to contain black, because if this pawn is pushed, well, this takes all the pressure off d4. So that's why a3 is played. Bishop b7. Looks a bit funny to have the bishop blocked by the pawn on d5, but as we'll see, so often, magically, this long diagonal opens. Knight d1. So the knight does switch round to the king side anyway. I think it's because c3 can be played to support this d4 point. Queen c7. Black starts some counterplay on the c file and connects the rooks. Knight f2. Rook c8 already threatens to exchange. and take on c2. So c3 blocks. So that's solid, supporting this one. And now knight c5. And this is the typical maneuver in the classical French. So this knight has bounced around, went to d7, which looked pretty passive, but once it gets to c5, then suddenly things are very interesting for black. Supported by that pawn at d5, it can often hop into e4, and that really gives black dynamic play. And you can see there's a slight weakness here as well, so that's also a possibility to exchange on d4 and hop into b3. Which is why queen e1 was played. Let me just show you. So Yifan played queen e1, but let me just show you another game. There's a game between two strong players, Vescovi from Brazil and Cordoba, who I think is Peruvian. This was played by Vescovi. Rook d1. And watch what happened. Black exchanged, did indeed play knight b3, took here, queen b6. Now it looks like white is very solid here, but watch what happens. Rook c4, this is an absolutely typical exchange sacrifice in French positions. And this was taken, and you can see magically this bishop just rakes across the board. And, well, the computer thinks that white is better here, but in a human game, this is not at all easy for white. And black has superb compensation there. Anyway, that didn't happen, but bear that in mind. So queen e1, just making sure there's no problem with knight b3. Ding exchanged. You could go knight b3 here, but Ding played in a traditional way, just sticking that knight on e4. What a beautiful square. If that's exchanged off, well, that lengthens the bishop's diagonal a little. It might sit very nicely on d5. And, you know, perhaps f6 or f5 could come as well, just to make everything really secure. But Yifan had something else in mind. She played knight d3, and I have to say that's a very tempting move because she is looking at the c5 square. Queen b6, queen makes way for the rook. b4, so this is her idea. She's looking to play the knight into c5. Now, given one more move, that looks pretty impressive. Would block out the rook. So that's why Ding played rook c3. And he has a very interesting idea in mind. I mean, I would be tempted to play rook c4. That's kind of the classical move, you could say, as we've seen in the other game. And play might go like this. That could be exchanged off. And then queen c6. So that if bishop takes rook, then that is quite impressive. I mean, not that it's forcing mate or anything. I mean, you know, white can even defend with moves like this. But that gives fantastic long-term compensation. These pieces are so well placed, and that's a protected passed pawn. Of course, white is not obliged to take the rook. But then again, d4 is always in the air. And this rook is kind of floating around quite nicely as well. And don't forget moves like f6 to break things open a little bit. So that's what I would anticipate. But Ding had something else in mind. It's very interesting. Rook c3. So he's keeping an eye on that bishop, so the knight can't move. So that's why Yifan played rook f3 to guard the bishop. Rook c8 doubles the rooks. Looks quite nice. And knight c5. So this is the move that's been planned for the last few turns. Knight looks really impressive there, and it breaks the communication between the rooks. But Ding had something very interesting prepared. First of all, he sacked the exchange on e3. Then he exchanged knights on c5. And now, what did he do? Well, he didn't play queen c6 because that diagonal can be covered very easily. But instead he played rook, excuse me, rook takes c5. So this shows wonderful imagination. Already ditched an exchange, and he goes in for this. Well, I think it's actually pretty clear that this shouldn't be taken, because black is going to pick up the rook and follow up perhaps with d4. I mean, black certainly has tremendous compensation there. Yeah, don't forget that these pawns could play a role as well. Therefore, Yifan just put the king in the corner, just stepping out of the bishop, the queen's diagonal. And here's again a very interesting decision from Ding. Here I would think the most natural move to my eyes looks like rook c2. The queen hits the rook. In fact, it's not so clear. I mean, maybe Ding was concerned about this move. So if queen takes rook, and there's a threat to play the rook down here. I mean, this is not at all clear, actually. Bishop d8 covers, queen c1. Maybe he'd seen something like this. But, I mean, one doesn't need to exchange here. One could also play rook a2. And then rook d3. Maybe he wasn't happy about this. Maybe he thought that this rook might just be exchanged off. It's hard to say. In any case, he didn't play the obvious move. He played rook c7, and I think this shows great nerves. It's a very calm decision. He sacrificed an exchange, but he doesn't rush it. He's confident in his compensation and thinks he has a very solid position. After rook c1, he avoided the exchange of rooks. Generally, that's what you need to do if you've ditched an exchange. All these squares are covered, so this rook can't gain entry. And the rook moves behind the passed pawn. Queen d2. Now, g6. So that gives the king a flight square and makes it harder for white to push with f5. Already, this is actually quite a critical position, although you wouldn't think it, given Ding's last couple of moves, actually. Yifan should have played rook d3 in this position. And the reason is that if d4 comes, then bishop f3 can be played, and that just neutralizes the bishop, and yeah, not so great. So black should hold back with d4. And yeah, maybe play the bishop round here, maybe queen back and queen b6. But I mean, to be honest, maybe just king g7 as well, just hold the position. It's hard for both sides to really find a clear plan of action there, actually. In any case, instead of rook d3, h3 was played. And that gave black the chance to push on with d4. And this is unpleasant. Bishop h4, that rook gets pushed all the way across. Bishop d5, also very pleasant, just gaining time. And now d3. It's also already possible to play bishop f2, actually, with the idea of bishop e3, but d3 is also very attractive. So queen takes will allow a big discovered check, and bishop takes allows a nasty pin. So bishop f3. Now, it is possible to damage the pawns there and move the queen in, but Ding plays in a very principled way, keeping the bishops. Very nice to have the bishop pair. And that bishop just locks the c-file, makes these rooks look dreadful, and supports the d-pawn as well. So feels like a very nice move. You can see, I mean, black's compensation is evident now, because this square can be used, and actually white's pawns are a little bit weak. It doesn't take much imagination to play queen d4, bishop g3, and this one drops, or sometimes you can even undermine the pawns with g5. But anyway, first things first, queen d4, g3. Well, understandable that Yifan wants to get rid of the bishop, but now we have a classic bad bishop bounce. We see this in the Kalashnikov and the Sveshnikov and lots of different positions. The bishop just bounces off the back rank and to this wonderful diagonal. So rook e1. I mean, white is really short of moves now. I mean, there are going to be lots of ways for black to make progress here, but well, this one allows queen f2 check. Exchange of queens, hits the rook, and now d2. It's not, the situation for white is not improving, let's put it like that. And bishop e1, there's a secure move. I mean, really, maybe white's best chance here is just to give back the exchange. Not that this is a pleasant endgame, because this immediately wins a pawn, but I mean, maybe that's gives white a slight chance, but it's not very pleasant. There's nothing in black's position to attack. King is completely safe. Black can yeah, make progress on the queen side. Anyway, after bishop e1, rook a1 played, and rook d3. It's getting worse and worse, basically. That prevents this bishop from moving. g4, rook e3, very nice. And bishop b3. So the rook prevents the sacrifice, and black is just winning back in exchange. Right, opposite colour bishops. Does that help white? Not greatly. I mean, it's just horrible to have to defend with the pawn on d2. So, I mean, this is just a winning position for black. And Ding's technique was really good. So if that pawn is taken, then rook e1 is going to win the bishop. So rook a2. Rook d3 defends the pawn. Rook came back again. And rook c3. So it's going to come here. And after rook a2, of course, you don't repeat. But bishop e1. Threatening this. Rook c2, a check. And Yifan clearly didn't fancy putting the king here, which is just way out of action. But instead went for king f1, allowing this one. I mean, it is lost, but it's all pretty miserable, basically. I'll just go through the final moves. So Ding creates a pass pawn and pushes this king around. I'll just get to the end fairly quickly. Yeah, there's really nothing to do. And there you go. We got there in the end. There's going to be a queen on the next turn. Yeah, I really like the way that Ding sacrificed the exchange there. Not in the traditional way, but with rook c4, but going for this move, rook c3. Really imaginative. You know, he's prepared to go his own way. And as I said, in those days, well, even now, Ding very prepared to give up material. And in the next game, I'm going to show you an absolutely splendid sacrificial attack. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying this. If you want to see more games by Ding, do check out the community tab, because each day I'm posting an old video that I've made of Ding's games. So do check that out. Thanks for watching.